How many of you were not participating in the yesterday's morning session when I presented on smart government and open data? Could you raise your hands who were not there? Okay, so there are a few people. Okay, I will try to avoid the repetition between the two presentations as much as possible. Okay, thank you very much to the organizers for the opportunity to share with you some of the best practices in using open government data to transform public services and improve social outcomes. I'm from the World Bank ICT practice, and I'm also in charge of the knowledge sharing initiatives of the World Bank in ICT for development space. And it's my pleasure to be here and share with you our experience. And also very honored to have on our panel a very senior representative of the Indian government, Mr. Satpathy from the Planning Commission, who will share a bit later on the Indian experience with open data. So the way we will structure this panel is that I will make the introductory presentation on open data concept and why we think it's so transformational. And then we'll ask Mr. Satpathy to share on the Indian experience so far and what's next in open data in India, perhaps more on the supply side of open data from the government perspective. And then I will ask my colleague Saki Kumagai, who is a social development specialist at the World Bank, to focus on the demand side of open data from the citizen engagement perspective. So how can open data increase its engagement? What's the role of civil society in that? So we'll have three relatively short presentations, and then we'll hopefully interact with you and have some questions and comments from your side. So without further ado, let me just go straight to the slides. I think most of people think that open data is just a web-based information. And most people think we're already doing open data. But even in the World Bank, we've been doing open data for the last 4 years. But I would say 95% of my colleagues do not really understand what is open data. And that's the World Bank who is supposed to know these things, right? So I think we should not take it for granted that majority of people do not have a clear understanding. So I would like to again clarify that open data is data that's technically open, which means it's in the right editable electronic format or API. So it has to be in certain formats. So examples are TXT, HTML, XML, CSV, etc. So PDF, images is not open data. Okay, so I just want to clarify that. And it has to be legally open. So you cannot put restrictions on reuse of data, on commercial or other use of data. So it has to be properly licensed or otherwise allowed to be shared freely and distributed. And it is, in most cases, free. So if data is available on a chargeable basis, it's only for very modest cost of redistribution, but not to make any profit. And again, when we talk about open data, we're talking about public data. It's not private, it's not confidential, it's not sensitive data. It's public data, which according to the legislation on access to information is supposed to belong to the public anyway. So if it's supposed to be public, then why not make it open technically and legally? So it's just a low-hanging fruit. It's a relatively easy thing to do. When you talk about public data, it's all kinds of data. It's transport data, cultural data, scientific data, financial, statistical, weather, environmental, all kinds of economic data. So it's a very rich set of data sets. And also there's a lot of confusion between open data and open government. Some people equate that open government is about open data is about open government. These are actually related concepts. There's an overlap right in the middle, but it's not the same thing. There is a lot of open data which is not government. There's a lot of government data which is not open. Okay? And there's a lot of open government activity which has nothing to do with open data. So it's very important to understand the difference. And also, some people equating open data with big data. So there's also a lot of confusion. There's an overlap. Again, there's a substantial overlap. A lot of big data can be opened, but not all of it. In fact, majority of big data, is not open. Similarly, majority of open data is not open. It's not big. It's a relatively small data sets. Would not fit the definition of big data. I would focus in this presentation on why open data on one specific aspect. In my view, the most exciting reason why governments should open data is not so much transparency and accountability, which for some of my colleagues in the civil society is probably the main thing. From where I sit, I think the most important catalyst and reason to open data is economic growth and innovation. It's what they call fuel. Open data is a fuel for innovation. And there's been a lot of studies which prove that open data can be a very powerful tool for economic growth and innovation. McKinsey study has been cited very frequently. A lot of people have questioned it, but still the numbers are very, very impressive, and they have a methodology to back it. They estimated 3 to 5 trillion annually in economic impact of open data in just 7 sectors. Similarly, in the European Union, the estimated benefits were up to 140 billion a year, which is about 1% of GDP. The Australian study of return on investment of open data found 500% ROI. Another study made by Deloitte in the European Union found that after data was opened, reuse increased between 10 times and 100 times more than charged for data. So there's a consistent evidence that opening data has a lot of economic impact. Just a few country examples. In US, after they opened the GPS data in '94 under President Clinton, today $122 billion of economic benefits are being generated in the US economy, and 5.8 million jobs in GPS-intensive industries directly related to this data. The UK National Mapping Agency supports over £100 billion a year of GDP activity. Because US was a leader in opening weather data, now there are over 400 companies employing 4,000 people. In Europe, which lagged behind in open weather data, the numbers are in a fraction of that. In Denmark, after they opened the addressing data, they estimated the benefits of $21 million per year and 2,200% return on investment, according to the methodology. UK claims that after opening data on cardiac surgeons, 240 cardiac surgeon individual clinical outcomes were released, deaths were reduced by 1,000 per year. So you see how open data can save lives. And of course, in transport, open data has been most impressive. We have thousands of apps in New York, 68 in New York alone, thousands of apps across the United States, which are improving public transportation and saving time to people. UK has released a location of 300,000 bus stops, and because of the crowdsourcing through OpenStreetMap, 18,000 were corrected, which improved the quality of this data. And there are examples of companies which have used open data to create very successful business models. In UK, there's Spice Cavill. It's a procurement analytics firm which gets data from the government for free, analyzes it, and then sells it back in terms of value-added information services, and makes a lot of money on that, which is a good example of commercializing open data. Also in UK, by publishing prescriptions of medicines, this allowed to save £200 million a year because doctors works, there was a pressure for them to issue less branded drugs and more generic drugs. Also in UK, which is a leader in this space, that's why I'm giving you a lot of examples, because when they opened the data, they identified 20,000 pregnant men, which also helped to correct this information, in the NHS. There are companies in every sector. In agriculture space, the Climate Corporation has evolved into a $1 billion company just in the last 4 or 5 years. And they are a very popular resource for farmers. They sell insurance products, they provide information portal, other information services. And as I said, now they were bought for about $1 billion recently. And it's a great example of how private sector can commercialize government data, crop information, weather information, etc. In the energy sector in US, Opower is very successful in commercializing government and private source of data, producing very valuable analytics products to how to save energy, both producers and consumers. In health, it's just the beginning of this open data era. So iTriage is a very famous portal and mobile app which was recently purchased by Aetna. We don't know how much they sold it for, but it's a very powerful platform for sharing health information, which is based on government data to some extent. And we have, also in US, there's this famous resource called greatschools.com, where parents can make smart choices where to send their kids. They analyze, thanks to this website and mobile app, you can choose the best school and find the right house or apartment to buy, thanks to ratings which great schools provide. For example, when I was purchasing an apartment a few years ago, for me it was very important to know whether the school is rated at 10 or 5 or 6. So this is a major factor for smart choices for buying real estate. Uganda is one of the countries in the developing world which has started to use open data. And actually this example is, shows that there is a very robust evidence of impact. Over the last 5-10 years, they analyzed the impact of opening government data in health area, and they identified 33% reduction in under 5 mortality after releasing this data. Just briefly about what World Bank is doing in the space. So not only we opened our own data about 4 or 5 years ago, which is now available in multiple languages on our website, mobile apps, so you can get any kind of information, statistical, financial, procurement information. But increasingly we're starting to collaborate with governments to help them make the most of their data for economic, social development. So we have a team which is working in about 30 countries on this agenda, and we work on different aspects of the what we call innovation ecosystem around open data. And so open data is not a technology project. If you can see at this ecosystem, it has multiple dimensions. There's a leadership factor, so you need to have strong political leadership for it to work. There's a policy and legal framework. Without that, open data will not be really effective. You need to have institutional setup. You have a focal, agency. You need to have representatives in each agency, ministry, data officers, etc. You need to have focus on developing, catalyzing applications and co-creation of services. There's a lot of capacity building training which needs to be done. Citizen engagement, the demand side, extremely important. You need to have financing available to catalyze the ecosystem and finance the opening of data, digitizing data, and etc., and creating of mobilizing the developers. You need to have technology infrastructure, take care of cloud computing, hosting platforms, and cybersecurity, price, etc. So we have a range of activities to support client governments. So we collaborate on open data assessments with different governments, both national and subnational, which helps produce action plans in a particular sector or particular country or focus area. we help launch and implement and finance open data initiatives. So if you're interested to initiate open data program, we can support that. We also work on the supply side of open data, helping improve the quality of data, digitizing data and publishing in compliance with standards. As well as the demand side, Saki will talk a bit more about citizen engagement activities. We're doing a number of tech camps, hackathons, apps competitions, data journalism, boot camps, etc. Helping on legal issues, doing analytical work, case studies on different countries and other places, and building partnerships globally on open data. And you can be also part of these partnerships. We have worked, as I said, 30 countries. Started working in India about 8 months ago, so we can share a bit more about this during questions. Working both at the central government level, and ICT is actually our partner. We're discussing some collaboration activities with the central government, as well as with the DIT, the Department of Information Technology. And we're also working at state level. We collaborated with the governments of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana on opening open data innovations in the rural space. We have developed this toolkit on open government data, which is available in open source to everyone to use. You can download lots of case studies, lots of reference materials, various tools, including what we call the Open Data Readiness Assessment and Action Planning Tool, ODRA. So that is our flagship tool, which allows us to quickly develop an action plan and to help a partner government organization to launch an open data initiative or to take it to the next level. So it provides this comprehensive analysis of gap analysis of benefits, opportunities along the 8 parameters of open data ecosystem. As I mentioned those 8 pillars earlier, so we look at the level of readiness, from red to green, where are the gaps? And as I said, work with a number of countries. I'll just highlight a couple. Moldova was one of the first countries to launch open data in Europe and Central Asia about 4 years ago under World Bank Finance Project. They initiated the open data program. Today they have about 800 data sets, a lot of apps, a lot of examples of effective use of government data, which was very much integral part of the Smart Government Project, e-government project, which World Bank Finance. We also worked in Russia in a state level, Ulyanovsk Oblast. Actually, that was a place where the open data methodology, assessment methodology was developed. We piloted this ODRA, Open Data Readiness Assessment tool in Ulyanovsk. And more recently in India, we had the collaboration with the state governments in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, where a workshop in September and a team of experts did a quick readiness assessment for the rural open data solutions. And as I said, we do analytical work. We'll be very keen to collaborate in India, producing a case study of open data at the central government or at the subnational level. And the Global Partnership for Open Data, which World Bank is financing, is available to all of you to provide training, to raise awareness, help on data portals, help on broader open data initiatives. So we mobilize a number of leading organizations like Open Data Institute, Open Knowledge Foundation, and many others which are available to help any client governments. Thank you very much, and it's my pleasure